why do mistakes like this happen when you're designing a kitchen? Well, every perfect project has what I like to call the Holy Trinity of home building. You may have heard of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Well, that's an apt analogy for what's required in construction because every perfect project starts with an architect. They're aware of how your choices fit into the context of the entire project, past, present, and future. But they can't make your choices real, which is why you rely on a contractor who I assure you will be dying for a lot of people's sins. But neither the contractor nor the architect keep their finger on the pulse of the times. That's why they rely on an interior designer who, instead of being filled with the Holy Spirit, is filled with Pinterest. Unfortunately, though, most homeowners won't have the Holy Trinity on their project. If they're lucky, they'll have an experienced contractor who's being asked to wear more than one hat. That's how a lot of these mistakes happen, and in this video, I'm going to show you what to avoid. Your cabinets are probably going to be a third to half the cost of your kitchen remodel, and I made a separate video about how to choose cabinets. They're either going to be pre-assembled, ready to assembled, or custom, and I help you compare your choices to the classiness of those choices. But the people that don't use professionals for cabinet layouts often run into a very specific problem. The doors and drawers unintentionally bump into each other. Now, this is an avoidable step because most people who sell you cabinets are willing to do those layouts for free. So it's an important step. Don't skip it. Next, I want to take a step back and show you some of the not so obvious choices that can throw a total wrench into your plans. And before I do that, I want to remind you of my 3 rules of construction. Rule number 1, always simple, never easy. Rule number 2, always expect a surprise. And rule number 3, the price always gets paid in full. For example, did you know your subfloor needs to be at least an inch thick? If it's not, the subfloor could flex, then you start cracking grout, the tiles could pop. Not only that, the subfloor needed to be leveled out before you even started. So if you go with a cheap flooring contractor or you're doing this yourself and you don't realize what you're getting into, all of a sudden you more than paid full price of a much better contractor. And what about the flooring? Should it be installed before or after the cabinets? Well, if it's a floating floor that needs room for expansion and contraction, you don't want to install it first and have it get pinched by the cabinets. That could buckle the floor. But what about the appliances? Should the flooring go under them? Well, I tend to think so, but the manufacturer warranty might not agree. There's no substitute for experience in construction. And one way to think about this is with a question. How long does it take to grow a 100-year-old oak tree? It takes 100 years. And even though the tree is doing the same thing year after year, it's constantly taking a slightly different form. For example, I've had 2 different kitchen remodels stop because of clogged sewer mains, and they were both for different reasons. First one, new homeowner, old house, they hadn't even moved in yet, but they had hard water on the property, and unbeknownst to anybody, that sewer main had been getting smaller and smaller with scale. Eventually, while we're remodeling the house, painter flushes the toilet, toilet overflows into the bedroom. Surprise. Different time, the sewer main for the sink in the kitchen was clogged with 60 years of fat, oil, and grease on a cast iron drain. We had to cut that drain out and also used it as an opportunity to install a sump pump in the crawl space that was beneath the kitchen. Surprise. Speaking of surprises, the rules are always changing with electrical. For example, you used to have a receptacle on the side of your island beneath the counter. Now it's optional and it can't be beneath the counter. And if you change any receptacles on the wall of your kitchen or you have to add a new circuit, you're going to have to add a new arc fault breaker at the panel. So you don't want to overlook those considerations, but the biggest mistake I often see with electrical is related to lighting, because all great design starts with light. And I have a free lighting guide on my page where you'll see there's 5 types of light that you want in your kitchen, but the biggest missed opportunity is having at least 2 different moods. People spend their money on kitchens and bathrooms and you want to enjoy it. And one way you can do that is to have an active set of task lighting, but then a different mode for your kitchen where it's warm and cozy. And you have to figure that out before you start buying and installing anything. Now, before we get into countertops and backsplashes and paint and appliances, there's a few weak points in your kitchen that can cause a lot of water damage. That little water line to the ice maker behind your fridge, it loves to leak. It's often a little plastic line, maybe it's copper, but if it breaks when you're on vacation, and I've seen this happen, I saw a guy get $100,000 water damage bill while he was gone, and it wasn't even covered because the insurance company said that water line leak was negligence. I mean, he let it leak for a month after all. That's all it takes to lose your coverage and have a nightmare on your hands. Another spot where we often see major water damage are water lines on exterior walls in freezing climates, especially in climates that don't freeze very often. If you remember, Texas had a big freeze a few years ago. A lot of folks were surprised by frozen pipes, and that can be avoided if you insulate those pipes or move those pipes to an interior wall. Now, there's a bunch of other ways your house can leak, and I made a video about 12 common leaks that you're going to find in bathrooms and how to stop them. But one type of leak people don't think about in the kitchen very often is water backflowing into the dishwasher. Now, an air gap device on the countertop can prevent this. You can also get a dishwasher like Miele that has a built-in air gap device. Most building departments don't require it, but some do. And so if yours requires it, you don't want to forget about that, or else you're going to be drilling a hole into your countertop at an inconvenient time in the project. And that's a perfect segue to mistakes people make with countertops. You're going to have at least a dozen choices, but you need to think very carefully about how you're going to use them. Anything with a resin, like an epoxy counter, or an engineered stone, like a quartz or a butcher block countertop, they can be permanently damaged when you take a hot pot and pan right off the stove and set it on the counter. Similarly, you can ruin a marble countertop just in one night by leaving something spilled on the counter. Now, we refer to the placement of your stove as the work triangle, and you want it to be well balanced and unobstructed. But something that will affect the placement of your stove is the distance to an exterior wall or your roof line. For every 12 inches of stovetop, you want 100 CFM of exhaust, and you need that exhaust line to be as short as possible. This helps you efficiently move air out of the space. This is something people forget about. Now, I wrote a separate post about how to choose a stove. You can go electric, induction, gas. They each have their own advantages and disadvantages, but if you have a gas stove, you must have an exhaust that goes out of the house. That's something a lot of people forget. Now, what did I forget? Well, you tell me. Your feedback is how I help you make informed choices for every room in your house. And I get feedback every day on social media. You can find me over there, or you can let me know what you want to see next right here on Remodel School.